Okay, I think we can start. So today we have the pleasure to have Daphne Tuncer as a guest. She's associate professor at École nationale des ponts et chaussées, NPC, and she holds an engineering degree from Telecom Sud Paris and a PhD from University College London, UCL. Her supervisor was George Pablo. Some of you may know him. And she was then a postdoc at UCL and lecturer at Imperial College. And now she's back in France in École nationale des ponts et chaussées. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, for the introduction. And hi, everyone. So we are a small group, so it's much better because I plan really to talk to be really like conversation. So I think it would be easier to have a discussion. So yeah, I'm currently at École nationale des ponts et chaussées. I spent almost 15 years of my life in the UK. I moved back to France 3 years ago. And I'm still trying to settle in because there is a big difference working as a researcher in the UK and working as a researcher in France. So when Andrea asked me if I wanted to come and give a talk, I say yes, but then I was considering what I should talk to you about. So there are many projects ongoing in distributed system, in network management. But then I say, okay, maybe I should talk about something which is more in my background research, something I don't really talk about in general, more in a peer-to-peer fashion. And I thought that maybe that's an opportunity to share that with you. It's a few things that I've had in mind for a number of years now. Get your feedback and see maybe that things that you've also been thinking about yourself and see if we can connect in any way. So as a disclaimer, this talk is not technical. I'm sorry if you were looking for something technical. It's more about like doing research for more than 18 years now. I've seen a number of things, especially how technologies have been evolving, how they've been really infusing all our life, and the responsibilities that we do have as researchers in this domain. But before we start, so I didn't know how many people to expect, so maybe we can just do a roundtable. We're not that many. So I just wanted to get an idea of what was your background. So I understand the computer science talk, but of course there are many domains in computer science. So just to help, I just copy-pasted the nomenclature of ACM for computer science domain. So who is really doing network research? Okay, well, what are you? Distributed system? Okay, well, hardware? No hardware. A more theoretical aspect like maths, applying maths, or yeah, we do have a few people. Do we have people doing on human-machine interaction? Or all right. So I understand it's like some maths and some networks that we have here today. All right, great. And how many of you are doing the PhD currently? Or you all established research? Oh, okay. Most of people are actually like early career, at an early career stage. And for those of you who already graduated, did you spend a bit of time outside France? Yeah, yep, okay. Okay, you will understand why I'm asking this question because this has a bit of incidence on what I'm going to say. So thanks. So about me now. So yeah, I've done research in computer network for a number of years. I've been working on different types of environments. So my PhD a long time ago was on core networks. I was doing traffic engineering at the time. So more specifically, my domain is really network management. So what is network management? So network are a very complex system. We have many protocols, we have many types of resources, we have many applications. So we need to coordinate all of that. So for a long time, I've been interested in how we handle this inherent complexity of this system. And now I shifted a bit. So I'm more working on cyber physical systems. I have two main use cases. So I've been working for a few years now on the electric mobility and specifically on the charging infrastructure. When I was in London, I actually started my startup in this domain. I left the startup, but the startup is still living with my collaborators there. And I work a bit more today on smart buildings. So I collaborate a lot with E4C, Energy for Climate, and the demonstrator of E4C. So that's for my background research. But in parallel to that, as I mentioned, so I've had all this kind of, so it started as side thoughts and then started as side project on what I call like people's data and digital development. So basically what I'm interested in here is both like how we do research, how what we do impact people's life, and how we can also train people in this domain in a responsible way. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. So it's kind of experience. So we are engineers, so we like to try things. So that things I've been trying over time. I'm not saying that they all work, but I want to share like these things, and maybe also if you try things in this domain, that'd be very great. So the talk I don't think will be 45 minutes. So I don't know exactly how long it's going to take, but maybe 30. All right, so you say responsible digital development. So maybe the question that you ask is, what do you really mean? So what I've been observing, so the things I've been thinking about, but in the meantime, there have been a number of initiatives in different domains. So we can think in terms of having workshops that started really looking into these things. So here an example from Sitcom. So Sitcom is a top tier conference in networking. So in 2022, it's a workshop that I attended, which was on how we build a responsible internet. So basically, we're people from networking community, and we discuss what this means and how we contribute to that. More recently, you might have seen this special issue from computer networks, people doing networking, on value-driven, sustainable, and ethical networking. So of course, we can discuss what this really means, but it means that there is definitely interest in the community. We also have seen a number of position paper in the recent years. So here I'm moving a bit outside from networking, but in a game AI domain. So there was Michael Cook, who is a lecturer at Queen's Mary in London, position paper on the social responsibility of game AI. But we can cite other of these type of papers. Oh, so that's people that actually investigate, well, different things. So either so using AI to create games that can be used for things, or our game can inform AI development. So there are two things. Well, that's what I learned because talking to these people, it's not my domain.
I mean, it's not game theory, but it's
no, it's game.
Play.
It's really game. Yeah. So one of the projects they have ongoing, and I think they got European funding for that. They wanted to see with AI whether they could recreate ancient game from antique times. So it's quite an interesting project. So that was for like position papers. Then we've seen as well in the education. So maybe you've been following up on that. So it's Harvard, they introduced in their computer science curriculum, ethics classes. So it's collaboration between computer science and law. So there are people from law department coming. And they decided to embed this in the curriculum of every computer science student. As far as I know, in France, so if you sign up, I mean, if you enroll, in a PhD program in computer science, you also have to follow some ethics class. So that starts coming. More coming back to research, so you might have seen that in the reviews, in the journals or in the papers that you submit or review. Sometime now there is an inclusion of a required ethical statement, both from the author and from the reviewers. And we see it happening as well in the standardization domain. So here is a working group from IETF called Getting Ready for Energy Efficient Networking. So they are interested in what it means to do green networking. So all these initiatives, you see, they are touching on different things. So whether how we assess research, how we train people in computer science related field, how we think about what we do, how we standardize things. So that's what I call responsible digital developments. All right, so maybe you're still not convinced, and what you're thinking now is, well, that's just yet another ethics thing, okay? So yeah, I know we talk a lot about ethics. So I don't know if ethics, so have you noticed maybe, so, hi Vincent. Have you noticed, so I didn't use the word ethics in the title, I use the word responsible development because that's a discussion we had with colleagues for a long time, whether we do ethics or more like something else. So what we're trying to talk about here is that, no, we're not only concerned about the ethical concern coming with the development of AI, that's things that we hear a lot now in the news. People have been attending a number of events where people are really discussing the implication of AI. But in fact, my observation when going to this event is that it's just go beyond AI. What people are really caring about is digital stuff and not only AI. I think AI has just been like the accelerator for this discussion. So it's not only about revisiting research codes of conduct. So you might also have been following up on the update of code of conduct from ACM and IEEE in the recent years, especially with the introduction of AI tools. So how we should at least acknowledge the use of this tool, how this can impact the research we do. So we're not only talking about that here. It's not only about regulation of laws. So here I'm not talking about the AI Act or like a digital marketplace, what a digital service act, sorry, or digital market act or GDPR. Of course, this is part of it, but it's not only what we're talking about here. So what we're trying to talk about is that, okay, so we do have this concern. So they manifest in different things. So us as researchers, what kind of tools do we have, either to embed this questioning in our research or in the way we actually train and educate younger researchers or students in this domain? So what we want, we are engineers again, we want something we can act upon. We want actionable resources. So that's how we started. So interesting idea maybe to start with is what is called the engagement scale. Because what really lies behind all the things I'm discussing is that, as you can see, and maybe that thing we never thought of, that's not really the core of what we do as researchers, okay? So what this means is that if we start thinking about that, that takes time. So how much time are we willing to invest in thinking about this thing? Because of course, this is going to take, to have an impact on what we do, all right? So he's thinking about, first of all, our responsibility toward the development we make and the impact of our contribution. So there is a big initiative that started in 2013 at the University of Cambridge, Department of Mathematics, which was led by Maurice Kedo and his colleague, Peter Bursell-Hall. So they had the same idea in maths. They say, well, they were feeling as well that what they were doing had an implication. So they say, okay, we need to do something about that. And so they had all this discussion and they decided to start a project with an education focus, which was we need to teach ethics to students in mathematics. So they had this first workshop that was organized, if I remember correctly, in 2015. And out of this workshop, so they had this kind of, was a position paper on what they call the 4 levels of ethical engagement. And what they were trying to explain in this paper is exactly what on the top is what's the time that we invest. And here they identified 4 levels. So from people, and we're not making any judgment here, you may say, well, I'm not interested at all in that. It means that I'm not going to invest any time in talking and thinking about these things. So that's the lowest level of engagement. You might have some awareness of the ethical implication, but you're not doing much. So still it takes time just having this awareness. So level 1. Then you might be ready to really try things. So you spend a bit more time, level 2. And then you can be an active advocate for the engagement, then that's the highest level, but then that means that you will take more and more time out of your research, whether it's through project or through education. And I think it's good to have this scale in mind because that's give a bit, at least for ourselves, because that's a very personal thing, an idea of where we fit. So here, I'd just like to pause on the things. So now that I'm at Ecole des Ponts, so yeah, there are some people doing computer science at Ecole des Ponts. And I'm interacting a lot with people from social science, okay? So it's not always easy, but something I've learned from social science is what they call narratives, the role of narrative. So what is a narrative? So we know that everything we do is driven. Either we really have a clear idea of what we do and we are strong opinionated and we're not very influenced by what other people say or have done before. But in general, there is kind of a dynamic in a domain which is driven by what people think is important to do. Okay, so that's what I would call narrative. So maybe to give you an example, so as a networking researcher for a long time, and I've never really thought about that before in a clear way, my narrative was I work on performance. Everything I do is performance driven. And that's very clear now when you look into what people do in network. It's high speed, it's high precision, it's high bandwidth, it's high rate, high scalability. And we never question this thing. Because maybe at the end of the day, well, that's not what we want to achieve, right? We are driven by narrative that we need to do something which is performance driven. Now I'm back to Paris. There's a new narrative that I've noticed, and I must say was not that clear to me when I was in the UK, is the optimization narrative. Oh, everything is about like demand and resources. We have to make sure we can use resources in an efficient way, which is true. That's the definition of engineering. Okay, we have limited resources, how to make best results. Spent a bit of time in Japan as well, and there I was working with people doing measurement. They also had their narrative there, measurement narrative, which was, oh, we need data about everything because we do measurement. Okay. So I don't know, have you ever thought about your narrative? Or how would you define your narrative? Question is for you. Any idea?
One of the three.
Well, yeah, if you all come from networks, that's why I was asking. Optimization. But have you ever considered have you ever questioned this?
No.
Yeah.
I think I have some different narratives because I am trying to do interdisciplinary research. So I have some narrative, engineer narrative around optimization and performance maybe. And I also trying to thinking that because I have a human science part in my PhD, but it's really hard to connect the two parts. So because in one end, in the computer science thing, we are trying to solve problems. So we have to define a well-defined problem and have a solution to it. And in the human science part, the fact is to describe something that is occurring. So the solution that I have is that I will do a model in the computer science part, so I can build the narrative in my model, but I still don't know if it's a good solution to solve that.
Yes, thanks a lot for that. Yeah, I have a slide actually on the multidisciplinary research because in fact it's very hard to say. So we all like saying, oh, we do multidisciplinary research, but in practice, especially when, as you said, when you start working with social sciences, we are different mindsets. So just having this connection sometimes is not easy. And as you said, I think the common solution is that we are going to model everything. Yeah. But any other kind of, no? Right. Maybe we can talk about that.
Doability. Trying to just get something done no matter the cost.
Yeah.
It's no longer a metric, just can I not?
Yeah. Binary kind of. Yeah.
There are few cases where it's just get it to work no matter the cost, no matter how bad it works.
True. And maybe that's why we have all these kind of green networking initiatives now. I don't know.
Maybe this is the first when something is very, very good. That is the first step.
Then you see how poorly it behaves and start doing better.
So of course, I'm not saying that this narrative are bad. I mean, well, that's, as we said, we are engineers and computer scientists. That's what we do. But I think just getting awareness of that we are part of a narrative help maybe thinking a bit out of the box. So, I mean, continuing on narrative. So that's an exercise I did a few years ago. Maybe I was very bored at the time, but I was really thinking like, so I was trying to find a definition, and that was for one of the lecture I was giving of networking research. And then I started reading, and I went to one of Jennifer Rexford, which is a famous person in networking. So she had a paper like 20 years ago where she was trying to describe networking research. And the conclusion was that it's very hard because we don't even know if it's a domain or a discipline. So starting from that, I was thinking, so how could I actually describe what people do when they do networking research? So the first thing I thought of is that I get the call of paper of many different conferences, and I will see like the topic of interest. But I was thinking, so I've been in this committee long time, and I know how they work. This call of paper, in general, you take something from previous edition, and you don't really bother changing many things. So I was not sure that was a good kind of proxy to really understand what networking research was. So I said, okay, there is another way by which we can, without running an interview, because I don't have time to run an interview with networking researcher, what I can do is that I can actually consult a description of the research group that tags themselves as networking research group. And because these are written by networking researcher, maybe I will understand what they say about what they do. So to do that, I tried to apply a small kind of protocol. I selected like 4 main publication venues in networking: Sitcom, NSDI, CNSM, IMC. Why I selected this one? Because they are considered as the best in networking and they cover different aspects of networks. So Sitcom is really networking, NSDI is more system, CNSM is network management, and IMC is measurement conference for the internet. So I selected 23 groups. I went to check their web pages and I just did kind of a keyword analysis. I tagged like kind of main keyword they were using and I tried to organize things a bit. And so I'm not saying that's the best classification, but that's how I came up with this kind of proposal. So when you look into this venue, basically networking research is about some properties, of course, some tools, the environment in which this is applied, if it's cloud, data center, etc. Work on functionality, work on different type of resources, hardware, software, and work on different mode of organization. And why I did this? Well, because I wanted to understand, so to give a definition, and also coming back to narrative means that if that's what people say, it means that their narrative is around this kind of main domain. So it will be very interesting to continue this classification. Automate. I'm pretty sure what I've done manually can be automated nowadays. It's not very hard. And see as well how this has been evolving over time. Because I did that, I think, in 2022 or 2021, and I'm pretty sure this has changed now. Since everyone is doing AI, I'm sure AI will be somewhere. And this came, so then I started thinking, okay, so maybe we can get a different perspective. So here you've seen like this classification. So what if now I get another perspective and I use kind of concept that, especially in social science, people talk a lot. So now if I look into networking research and, for example, time. So when we develop new type of networking technologies, so well, what we really work on as a concept is, well, time, okay? So these networks, they have been enabling kind of instantaneous communication across machine and across people. But maybe the underlying question is whether by doing so, we've been contributing to kind of having a uniformity in the perception of time. And we know time is a difficult thing to define. Okay. Or maybe just been accentuating a diverging perception across region and population. And most likely it has, right? Because we don't have all equal access to connectivity, for example. Then what about networking and research and space? Because of course, network as well do have like a notion of space. There is a physical space. We work on different type of infrastructure. We have different spatial footprint. There is a geopolitical space. There are administrative boundaries. What about networking research and interaction? So again, network is about enabling interaction between machine, between people. And we know that this has created major shift in many different domains, so public services, education, banking, whatever. Okay, and this has societal implications. So this one, I like it because I work a lot on automation. So what does it mean, networking research and automation? So for a long time, we've been thinking in terms of automation as just, well, we're just going to remove the operator from the loop, and we're going to have networks that self-operate. There will be no fault, no outages, because everything is about human intervention. But of course, this has an impact as well. So what will be the role of the operator in the future? And the environment. So of course, now we talk a lot about measuring the environmental footprint of networks in general, communication. I mean, the question is, and that's kind of what people talk a lot in environmental science, the notion of rebound effect. So if we make things better, isn't it just that we are going to make people use these things even more? So no need to go into detail here. So my message was that by just changing a perspective, so we see that we start like formulating different questions, and that can give us idea of different type of topics on which we can work, that are not only driven by the narrative of performance optimization or whatever. So maybe coming back to the question we are, yeah, I mean, of course, so it's not that we all as networking researcher or as computer scientists are going to move and do like social science. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that, so yeah, we really need to go beyond a model of research operating in silos. I think we all know that. We've all been talking about that, but in reality, this doesn't really happen because that's difficult. That's what they are encouraging with the Sustainable Development Goal of the UN. Okay, but how do we really make a multidisciplinary research that goes beyond the model of as a service or in support of? Okay, so a model of multidisciplinary research where we can together, different disciplines, create a new vocabulary that enable us to work on new problems. An idea I have, I'm not saying that's the right one. So I'm thinking, so maybe we need equivalent of what they have in biology and medicine, which is translational medicine. So translational medicine is the people who work at the interface between, well, developing new drugs and making these drugs used for people. So they understand the biology, they understand the medicine, and they understand the people. Maybe we need something similar in our domain. Yeah.
Are there examples in the past that have shown this in computer science and something like that? Like neural networks are an example, I don't know, between biology and neuroscience and computer science.
Yeah, well, so I don't have an idea now. I often think about archaeology, which I think is a very nice multidisciplinary domain where you have people like from computer science who use or people like from electrical engineering background that would come develop LIDAR, and then you can find, for example, by kind of hidden plan of ancient cities, and so maybe that could be a source of inspiration.
Yeah, but in that case, the scientific part, archaeology, and the use of technology that is on computer science, but I don't know if you mean that by...
No, that's what I'm thinking. Something, well, I don't know if it's deeper, but maybe so, yeah, this I understand, and that's definitely why we need technology, right? That's the definition of technology, but maybe there is also something that we can co-create things.
Right. And I have no, I mean, this is what I'm asking. I have no examples in my mind where such a story like this
where it's been really, yeah, I don't know. I mean, what I've noticed, because now, for example, I'm teaching a lot of students who don't have a background in computer science. And so, but they need still to know about these tools and these technologies. And what I've noticed is that, so I can't train them, I'm trained computer scientists, just doesn't work because we don't have the same background. So they need to be capable of understanding the essence of this technology without being experts. And that's why I started thinking we need something at the interface. We really need to create this new type of knowledge. And it's not just like, okay, I'm coming and telling you about a few things, because they will just forget about that. So they really need to embed new kind of knowledge.
I think one thing we see multidisciplinary research with computer science, probably security, when we start looking at the human aspect and how things react, how the loophole in security is always the human. So we try to take that into account to build robots. You really have to be somewhere between computer science and
behavioral science and computer science.
You're right. I think that's a good example. Or privacy research is also at that time. Yeah, true. All right. So this was just for context. But as I mentioned at the beginning, so the idea was to share with you some things that we've been trying. So I will start with education. So here is not my proposal. That's something I took inspiration from. So I'm back to people at Cambridge I mentioned earlier. So they have this huge initiative now going on for a number of years on training students in mathematics on ethics. So one kind of thing that they've been developing there is what they call a manifesto for responsible development in digital science. So how the manifesto look like? So basically it's in the form of pillars. Okay, and under each pillar, you have different questions. So their objectives. So they've been applying that for a number of years now for students there in Cambridge. They're also using this material, especially in finance sector in the city in London, to give some some training on ethics. And the idea is to take all the steps of a typical data science project, decompose that into all the questions this raised from an ethic or responsibility perspective, and try to make people think about all these questions. So, well, it's not my project and we don't really have time to go into details. So if you're interested, you can look at it. It's quite long, it's 70 pages. Okay, so you can see it's quite substantial. So it's not a training you do in an hour. It's a few days of work. But what I like about this was that this actually makes people in a situation where they have to think about that. So I wanted to apply that for my own teaching. But I thought, okay, I can't do like 70 pages with students. It's just, I don't have time and I think they will get bored. And so I said, okay, so I will create something a bit kind of more condensed, which is what I call, sorry, it may be like a bit pompous, but like a ethics by design diagnosis canvas. So I've been using it for 3 years now. So I'm still teaching at Ecole College. It's a class on introduction to digitalisation for students in the energy sector. It's MSc, so the students or like more mature student. And they react pretty well to that. I'm always very impressed by what they can do. So the way I've been thinking about this is that, so I will combine this manifesto in the 10 pillars with the innovation canvas. So I don't know if you worked on innovation canvas before. So it's actually a pretty useful tool. So innovation canvas in general is divided in 3 parts. So here I divided it in 4 parts, doesn't really matter. And the idea is to brainstorm. So when you get like kind of innovation idea to see if the project makes sense, you have the right resources and you're capable to working on the project. So I thought, well, in fact, that's what we're trying to do here. It's kind of innovation for like ethics, right? Can we actually think about like the implication in terms of, is our approach reasonable? What would be the opportunity? So do we have actually a use case for really developing this approach? And do we have the capability and think about like our own limitation? So that's how this is organized. Okay? So the students, they work on project for 2 weeks. And at the end, I ask them to fill in that form. Okay? And that's a way for them to see, okay, do we understand what was the objective of our project? Do we took into account the right kind of constraint, limitation, hypothesis? And do we know where our biases lie? So yeah, so the objective was to guide students about thinking about the implication of their data science project. Yeah, maybe, sorry, I should have said the students, I give students a data set at the beginning of the class, then they have, and with like kind of a general topic, and then they have to build a story out of this topic and this data set. So yeah, be able to describe the objective of project, the constraint, and the main hypothesis. So for me, it's also a very good sanity check because they work in groups. So I can really check whether everyone has been working in a group because they have to fill that in individually. Be able to identify the impact of their project development and the results they come up with. Identify the benefits and opportunities for the project and identify key capacity for the realization of the project. So now I'm marking actually students. I still have like half of students to go. And I mean, this year, I mean, so they all understood the objective of the exercise, so that was great. So that's one thing I tried, so that's kind of a tool I developed for education. Then maybe coming back to research. So that's something that, again, so it's kind of, I'll explain where the name comes. So I had all this thinking for a long time and I felt a bit isolated. I was trying to talk to colleagues, but when I was telling them about that, either they were telling me, oh, you need to do like social networks. That's not what I'm telling you about, or well, I have no idea what you're talking about and I don't care. And then, okay, talking about outside the lab, I started realizing some people were thinking like me and wanted to have really a space where we could really discuss these ideas. So that's what we started during the lockdown. So we are all at home, so we organized this monthly event. Okay? So it was online event. And it was thought as having kind of space for discussion. It's an 1 hour we reserve every month, where we can discuss about our sense of responsibility in the digital development. So we're a number of people. We all have background in computer science. So we had a long discussion whether we should get people from other disciplines, but we decided let's stick to actually computer science people. So why it's called Café Philo? Because when I was in London, from time to time, I was going to the French Institute and they organize weekly Café Philo. So it's really Café Philo. It's really talking about philosophy. And I really like the concept there because the concept is that you go there and there is no predefined agenda. When you get there, there is a democratic process. You are free to suggest a topic and then we have an hour to discuss the topic. So I was thinking that's actually a good idea. Let's meet, no predefined agenda. We raise a topic. Topic can be, oh, I saw this new paper and it has this implication. Let's discuss. Topic can be, oh, there is this event on AI. Let's talk about what's going to come up out of this event. It works for a while, but unfortunately, some participants didn't really like it. They felt that they missed kind of a clearly identified end goal for this kind of discussion. So to me, it was not a problem. I like the idea of being very free and disorganized, but for some people, this didn't really work. Okay. Yeah, so now we stop this, but we just wanted to share it with you because that's something we tried for 3 years. Not done bad. Okay. And the good thing about that is that we collected many references and resources on this question. I mean, something that emanated to this discussion. So last year, we organized a workshop online, which we called embedding ethical, embedding ethical, social, environmental consideration in research practice. That's something we did a year ago already. So the idea again was, so we invited different initiatives that work on responsibility in digital development, and we brainstormed on the motives, on the goals, and the changes of what we do and how we can develop tools that can be practical for people who are interested in this topic and want to apply. So the initiatives that we had around the table span different research activities. So we had people who were focusing on how we can raise awareness on this issue. Some people were focusing more on how we can carry out a research project in a responsible way, computer science. And some people were mostly interested in how we can disseminate in a different way, so not only like going to conferences, workshops, or whatever, the result of our research and how this can really have an impact. Yeah.
Another point, how the reward system should be thought of to do stuff.
Because I'm going to the observation. So.
Okay.
So again, so this is what the initiative do. Okay. So yeah, I put some slides because there were some observations that came out of this workshop. The first thing, and that was true for most of the people, that we felt like we are not legitimate to talk about these things because we are computer scientists and we, in fact, we don't maybe not really expert in philosophy or or ethics. So maybe we felt like we don't really, even if we say something, it's not going to have an impact. Yeah, so there was this kind of general feeling. So how do we make ourselves credible? And I believe we are credible because we have experience, and experience is always a good thing. Another observation then came up like from the discussion was that, okay, if we develop tool, we really need to think in terms of the target audience. And what I mean by target audience is like both the educational background, but also the cultural background. Because it's very hard, so these things get subjective at some point. And there is no universal truth about what is right or what is wrong, or what is responsible or what is not responsible. So we have our bias as being in Europe here. But when you start talking, so for example, we had like someone joining from Japan, what the person was saying, I can't have this discussion in Japan. It just doesn't tick there. People don't think this way, you know? And so that's where it gets very tricky, that we have to take into account like the diversity of cultural heritage that really influence how we think about this thing. In terms of like maybe going back to educational background, of course, there is also a question on what you want to achieve. So if, for example, if you develop something for students, you know that like the outcome is not going to be next day, that you actually train for the future. The transformation is going to take time. Then we also discuss, so what would be the shape, what would be kind of the nature, sorry, of the tools. So we kind of agree that we cannot have something very generic. This wouldn't work because that's very dependent on context and discipline. So what we should do, and because we are all computer scientists in this cohort, that we had a bias, we thought in terms of like software engineering, we should have like modular system. There's something that is easy for people to take and extend, for example. Okay. So need to proceed step by step. And yeah, coming back, Andrea, to what you were saying, yeah, we had a discussion about the fact that problem is that even if some of us are interested in that, currently there is very little reward. There is no money if we really want to have like kind of a continuous project on this, okay? And most people, they will see it as being an additional effort rather than really integral part of what we should be doing as researchers. And I'm back to the engagement scale I presented at the beginning. It means that you have to think how much time you want to invest in that if at the end you don't get any reward. For example, you get like or young PhD researcher, you want to get like academic job. Maybe if you spend time on that, maybe they won't reward it if you want position in computer science. So that's something we need to take into account. Yeah.
It's even more tougher. So you need to claim that you address sustainability, etc., etc. But you claim so that you dig this thing, otherwise you will not get money or even very good jobs. But then this is different than to really make an action.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely. Exercise, I mean, you're rewarded to sort of greenwash what you do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly. That's go beyond the ethical statement tick boxing. Absolutely. Yeah, everyone say, yeah, I'm doing sustainability, I'm doing green networking.
You have to say it, otherwise you don't get money.
But so the idea really underlying this is we need to go beyond that if we want to be effective. Yeah.
I think what you say is related to the fact that you are talking about tools or group or things that we can do at the scale of the researcher, of the small group of researcher, and we are reaching the limits that we also need transformation of the research system of how research is organized, because we cannot do all these things only at the scale of the researcher, and this is why there is no reward.
No, I mean, absolutely. But I think it's not only that. I think that it's also, even in research, and I'm not blaming anyone. Look, I mean, so everyone fits wherever they want. Okay, there's no problem with that. But I think even when you try to talk about this thing in research, in the current system, some people say, I don't care. I don't want to spend time and we should not talking. So it's not only about changing the system, which I agree. There's something of the system, but I think it's also within the current system. Some people do not see the value, who don't really believe that's something we should consider.
Anybody to see the value to change the system, because
well, you still need support, right? So there's so much you can do. I mean, being on your own somewhere.
it does not to be I'm not going to talk about an excuse.
An excuse, yeah.
Not to act. The fact that we need.
Well, that's why there are like a few initiatives going on.
But we don't need anything anybody to be aware before changing the way research is working. For example, if you want to write on a technical paper some things about the responsible part of the research, if you are spending time on this aspect, it will not be taken as a part of your contribution by the reviewer or the majority of the and this make invisible the work of the researchers that are present in this. So when we are showing the keywords of network researcher and the science, this is difficult to know if they are caring about responsibility or not, because they are supposed not to talk about this on their website. They're supposed to talk on the technical aspects.
Wait, yeah, well, so I don't know whether I think we agree. I mean, on what you're saying, but I think that so if they were, I mean, I don't know, but I think that if they were spending time, this will show up anyway. No, because so, but I don't know. First of all, I don't know who writes this, so I don't know if it's a PhD student then vanish, and there is no really like history. But my point is that, and what I'm showing here is that so you can't be on your own. And I understand you try things, but so at the end of the day, you need to connect with people who actually share kind of your concern or your question that you raise. And slowly, you start building things that you can try out. Yeah.
There is a moment where it's not.
Sorry.
This is the first step and the second step, but there is a moment when this is not sufficient.
No, I agree. I mean, and where the world is heading now, maybe this anyway is going to vanish. Maybe that's not going to be the main priority. But yeah, I'm not saying that everyone should be aware. I'm not saying that everyone should be doing that. What I'm saying is that if you are interested in this thing, there should be a way by which you can meet other people that think this way and try things. So what we can try, so this is just like a few ideas I have. Something I would really be interested in trying one day, but I'm running out of time with all the things I have to do. But so now we talk a lot. So I don't know in France, but at least in the UK, there's a lot of like this, like a flipped classroom. Yeah, so where basically, so you tell students something, but the student also do something. What if we have like the same model when we organize a workshop? Personally, I have a frustration. Maybe I'm getting older now, but when I go to workshop, it's great. So we have all this presentation, but I don't learn anything. I can learn that by just reading papers. Okay, and if I'm interested in something, I can just contact the author. So I'd like to go back to the real definition of a workshop. A workshop is about doing things. So what if we have kind of a new format of workshop where you don't select people based on their submission? Okay, you select people based on what they want to try. You all gather, and you, at the end of the workshop, you write the paper. So the objective of a workshop is to have a single paper that you work together during the workshop. I think that could be something nice to test, you know, and especially apply to these things. Another thing that I've been trying but failed miserably was to adapt like the manifesto, so the model I show you with the 10 pillars, to network research. That was much harder than I thought because, and like going back to what I said at the beginning, it's difficult to define what networking research is. So if it's difficult to define boundaries, then it's more difficult to identify questions. But maybe it would be interesting to try to have kind of similar manifesto for different domains. And that's maybe the simplest thing. So at some point I would like, and if people are interested in that, in having comprehensive, maybe not comprehensive, but at least a review of existing initiative, I think would be a nice starting point and a reference that people can use. All right, so to wrap up. So where do you stand? So either you think that this is not of my business and what I've been saying is bollocks, that's fine, yeah, no worries. If you didn't get the point, then I'm very sorry about that because it means that I need to really improve my presentation. But if what I say resonates with you somehow, I'm very happy to have a longer discussion. And in any case, I thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Very much. Questions? I mean, other questions? Online?
Thank you for the nice presentation, by the way. I do not really have question, but I like this initiative. It recalls me at some point something that we tried to do in the links. So at the beginning, when you try to probe the research domain, we had a past workshop that didn't really start about that we called research overflow, which was trying to establish a connection between the domains of the research domain of researchers and to see some trends. So I liked this part. I think that where you're right is this problem is multifaceted, which means that there is an educational part. You have to explain to the student, to your coworker, to your friends that we have to be careful when using or designing new tools, for sure. But I fear that designing, so the way you explain that we should redesign conferences that are too silos oriented, in my opinion, it will be difficult because when we are talking about a conference, they are targeted to say specific skills. I don't know, queuing theory, routing, whatever. And so sometimes even inside the networking community, it's not always easy to understand people from neighboring communities. And so I fear that if you say now we have a green conference where you mix everyone, it might be tricky in terms of review and in terms of interaction, even if it would be great to integrate those metrics. And that's why I think that conferences like AI conferences should enforce the need of assessing the environmental impact of models. For example, like in algorithmic, we have to prove that our algorithm works. What is the complexity? I think that for AI, we should force a researcher to do a minimal environmental assessment because this is something, in my opinion, that is missing. And maybe this could help those people to be more aware of the problem that it raises. So sorry, it was not a question, it was just an overall remark. But I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot for the comment. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, in terms of publishing something which is more, I don't know if it's general, but at least like crosses domain is very difficult. And I understand as a viewer that, well, first of all, even if you're supposedly an expert in the domain, sometimes it's very hard to review papers. We don't have time. We have too many solicitations. And sometimes we just like, we're not really expert.
Right.
So, but maybe there should be different type of publications. Maybe that's something else and trying new formats. That's maybe what I was hinting at. I don't know.
And my other problem, because for example, in my case, I'd like to work, for example, in green networking or in green AI. And actually, it's not so easy because either you do a state of the art, you say, okay, AI is dangerous for this, this, and this. The levels to mitigate the problem are those one, those one, those one, and you stay very high level. Either you try to build new model, new approach, but some people will say, you have to be careful because of the rebound effects, or you are just doing yet another optimization that will be used to provide even more AI or more of these services. And so my main concern is the answer is not only technocratic, as we would say in French. There is also, as you said, some implications in terms of regulation and in terms of educations. Because the main problem is it exists because some people can make money. It exists because it's cheap. It exists because it's convenient. And while if we cannot say embed a kind of good ethic in everyone, this means that we have somehow to regulate. And to me, the answer is not only in the scientist side.
Just a remark about what you said about the conference. So it's Ludmila. I speak many times now. About the general conference about the green things, it actually exists. It's called ICT4S. It's I think the bigger conference in computer for sustainability related questions, and it actually occurred what you just said, that is in terms of technical reviews, it's not really precise. You have really few insight when you are applying for this conference, but it's like a mix of many people interested in the and ecology and doing computer science that are publishing article in this conference. So it's really diverse, and for the moment it's not really an elitist or I don't have the word. It's not really reconnu. And it's really hard to do this thing, but it allows for putting the ethical and environmental question on the table, and also to have some controversies on the questions, for example, in rebound effects, because in this conference you have at the same time academic researchers who are interested in saying, oh, we need to degrow the computer science things. And at the same time, you have the people from Ericsson saying that there is no problem with the energy consumption of the network. So it's interesting. It's like an interesting place. But in terms of developing precise computer science, it's not easy. And also in terms of ethical place, it's not really precise, because this is not specialists of social science that are there. These are computer scientists. And so that's.
Okay, thank you.
Time. So, but maybe I think things are changing in the right direction, despite what we see now but at least in the research bubble. So I remember in 2016, I was in KTH, there was a workshop and people from Nokia and Ericsson were there. They were discussing about 5G. They were saying the world will be very good for robots. They will communicate each other, your car with your PC, and et cetera, et cetera. And I raised my hand and I said, okay, but what about people? So in all the work packages and projects that you and is funding, and also you are funding, is there any concern about health, electromagnetic exposure, etc.? The guy said, okay, this is another guy from KTH just interrupted me, and he said, okay, this is discussion for coffee. Okay, this was 2016. And I had to insist, and I had to show documents of World Health Organization saying that there was a concern. I think today nobody would dare to say this is discussion for coffee. So we are 8 years after. So at least there is awareness among ourselves. This is not like a thing. This is not like fried air, but it's something we have to care about.
Yeah, well, I'm just coming back to this slide because I think this special issue actually is driven by Nokia people on 6G. This value-driven, sustainable, and ethical networking. I think it's Nokia people behind that.
That is good.
Just because of you mentioning that. Are things moving forward? I hope so. I don't know if I'm as hopeful as you are. I think what has been changing is as well is that okay, these tools now become, I mean, you see it applied everywhere, right? And even people in other domains that were not computer science, they really understand that we have to understand how things work. So maybe that makes things also move in that direction. I don't know.
I hope.
Yeah, and I mean, you see this initiative at least. So this was an example from sitcom. There was another one the year after we also attended on human-centric networking. So yeah, I mean, at least people try things. We'll see, I mean, what this will result into.
Just a comment, because we've been talking a lot about conferences, and I think one of the things that has trouble moving is we're driven by publications a lot. And when you go to a conference, you see a lot of ways of doing things and very little call to action, very little roadmaps of, okay, what now? It's small incremental steps of just research. And I feel one of the things that's really missing is a change in the way we present our research, in the way we orient it, not just to publish, but to actually try to have an impact. And I don't think a lot of papers out there are out there to have an impact outside of more research. And that's probably something that would need to move. As you said, there's the narrative. Above all the narratives we have in research, there's publish. And that's probably, for me, one of the issues is too often we're doing this because we want to publish regardless of what happens behind. And not all publications are impactful is a problem.
I think we agree, right? I mean, so writing paper is just an exercise that we have to do, and like, what's the impact of this publication? Who cares? And yeah, I agree. I mean, I share some perspective. I have young PhD students, I have young researchers. They have to publish. So, but yeah, I would love not to publish maybe a paper every 10 years that has a real impact rather than having more publication. There was a recent paper from, forgot the name of, so she's doing kind of this outreach videos on YouTube, and the thing was, so what was the title exactly? It was, can't we get like good ideas anymore or something like that? And she was questioning the fact that, well, there's nothing really meaningful coming out from scientific publications.
And I liked what you said about the workshop. The idea of a workshop is something where you don't just bring papers, you should have something come out of it. That's probably something that's missing today.
Yeah, that's an idea. But I don't know how, for example, you go to like a sitcom or whatever, and you make this proposal for workshop. Would they accept it? I'm not even sure they will understand.
They won't.
You know? Exactly, because you have the publisher and like all that. Yeah.
I have a good example. ICC is a sort of conference and workshop driven by André de Palma and stuff. So they meet for 2 days in a countryside. They do this exercise every day, and every time they just had 2 editions. They have a white paper out of it, and there are experts. I mean, really experts, people working in IPCC documents, and professors from the best universities that are there. So it's a sort of this kind of idea. You don't come with the paper, you go out with the paper, where there are many disciplines inside.
I think this happened a bit in computer science education. I kind of heard of like they also do these kind of things, but I never following up on these conferences, so I'm not entirely sure.
You have in Germany, you have the Darstuhl seminar, which is working like that.
Yeah,
a
true.
little bit.
It's Daxtool.
When
But I mean, do they have publication out of Daxtool?
Yes, when you have a seminar for 1 week and you have to write a paper at the end altogether. And if you are in the Forêt Noire, you have nothing to do anyway. So
But again, it's still writing a paper. The problem is at the end, it's still writing a paper. Yeah, it's nuts. I find it frustrating that even when we do something differently, it's still a paper at the end.
But what could it be otherwise? It would be kind of visual.
Well, I like it when there are certain organizations. I'm thinking about IETF right now, where they have sort of workshops where they actually have standards or things like that after, where those have more impact. And it feels like we should aim to have, for say, green technologies, sort of some standardization committee where we would have these workshops and where it would be impactful in the sense that we would have something outside which isn't just text black on white. But that's a very empty idea right here in the middle of an empty room.
Okay, other questions or comments or observations? Otherwise, we can close it here. And if you have some minutes for a coffee, etc., we can continue the discussion offline. Thank you, Daphne.
Thank you. Bye bye.